Good afternoon, I'm Shane Masters with the Midday News. A special welcome if you're watching on onespotmedia.com, and we do apologize for the late start. Chairman of the Montego Bay chapter of the Jamaica Hotel and the Tourist Association JHTA, Robin Russell, says the signal being given by players in the tourism industry locally and overseas that they have set a restart date is aimed at ensuring that they will be first out of the block when governments give the go-ahead. The tourism industry has taken a massive hit from the COVID-19 pandemic. JHTA executive Wayne Cummings has said a date for reopening the sector must be set, as anything less could lead to the death of the industry. Mr. Russell agrees. He explained that when a date is decided, tourism players must get at least 8 weeks' notice. He was speaking today on the Morning Agenda on Power 106.
At some point, we have to open. Some people are pushing the envelope by putting in their protocols, by ordering their stuff out of China, by having everything in place, so that when the government says yes, we can roll out. But as in my hotel, I have to open my reservations. So do I wait until the government says, yes, you guys can open in a week time? Or do I open my reservations now, take some reservations, and if it's canceled, say, guys, I'm sorry, the reservations are canceled, we can put it to a further date. And I think that's what a lot of properties are now trying to do, is saying to the world, we are going to be open. We're going to be open soon.
Now, Sandals Resorts has indicated that it is planning to open the majority of its Caribbean resorts, with the exception of the Bahamas, on June 4. Sandals has acknowledged that the reopening will depend on those destinations choosing to reopen their borders by that date and the protocols in place. President of the Jamaica Confederation of Trade Unions, Helena Davis White, says job losses could continue as the country reels from the economic shock caused by the coronavirus pandemic. In an interview with our news center, Mrs. Davis White said the decline in economic activity has been taking a toll on small businesses. Mrs. Davis White said some companies have taken drastic action, such as layoffs, to stay afloat. She warned that the situation could worsen if Jamaica continues to record cases of the coronavirus.
That it doesn't get to that, and that the government will be able to put in place some programs that can assist employers to keep people employed. The thinking also is that if we can at least get over the hump in terms of the COVID-19 and the flattening the curve, as they call it, that we will begin to see the ability to lift some of those restrictions, then we will not be looking towards layoffs.
Meanwhile, the Jamaica Employees Federation is conducting a survey to ascertain the number of persons who have lost their jobs since the country recorded its first case of the coronavirus in March. Federation President David Wan says the findings should be available this month.
It's been a slow process. We're collecting some data to try to get a picture of exactly, how much affected businesses are by the COVID, and we're trying to get some very specific data, but we're not there yet. And I think we should have it sometime during the month of May that we can start to communicate, some quantitative measures of what the impact has been on employment among our members.
As the number of COVID-19 cases increased to just over 500, large gatherings outside remittance service agencies to receive government benefits are still posing a major health threat. Details in this report from Prince Moore.
This was the view outside a Western Union in Santa Cruz, St. Elizabeth, Sunday afternoon. Persons gathered for the third day to collect their COVID-19 financial assistance from the government. The distance between all persons in public spaces should be 6 feet apart at all times. However, physical distancing was far from their minds due to the frustration from having to wait too long.
We have been here from 6:30 this morning. We're coming from Dunby Pharmacy, and we haven't gotten to see them of the barcade here. I mean, I know what the barcade is for, but the police needs to disperse the crowd. Them say social distances, none that working there.
I'm here from 7 o'clock this morning.
And you're here till now?
Yeah.
So what are they saying to you?
I don't get through that the line because how the line I work, the line don't regulate.
Persons were asked to form a line. However, there was confusion as to where the line begins. Police were seen at the entrance of the building trying to maintain order with a barrier. Deputy Superintendent of Police Leroy Minot said the issue was expected.
We had issues with, close contact, bundling, and so on, double lines, triple lines. Essentially, we sought to bring things under control, spacing, distancing, as one would call it. There were challenges. Like I said, we expected that. But overall, there was cooperation from the very many.
Over in Kingston and St. Andrew today, the situation was no different. However, this recommendation.
The only problem I see, I'm a layoff 65, going 66 now, this year. And the problem what I see, it should start out by the elders, a line for the elders and the youngsters.
Prince Moore, TVJ News.
We now take a break on the midday news. We'll be right back. Welcome back, continuing the news. The local coffee sector has been taking a battering due to the COVID-19 pandemic. According to President of the Jamaica Coffee Exporters Association, Norman Grant, the losses so far have been significant. It's why the association has approached the government for assistance. Since Jamaica recorded its first case of the coronavirus, a number of sectors have been unable to cope with the economic fallout. Among those crying for help, the coffee industry. President of the Jamaica Coffee Exporters Association, Norman Grant, is seeking the intervention of the government by way of a price support of $170 to $200 million. Those funds, he noted, will enable the use of non-exportable High Mountain and Blue Mountain coffee by the coffee companies for the local market instead of imports. Mr. Grant highlighted why it is important for this help to be approved.
COVID-19 has affected the sector in a devastating way. Over 90% reduction in roasted coffee sales as most hotels have closed. Tourist arrivals are at zero. No new export orders in green. There has been, at the beginning of the pandemic, a shutting down of the markets in China, Korea, and Europe. Major markets are facing economic downturns due to the pandemic, and this has negatively influenced the demand of coffee worldwide.
He says the impact has been so severe that some hotels returned coffee to members of his association.
As a result of this, some 30% of inventory is in the trade unsold. This could value somewhere in the region of 700 million Jamaican dollars if we estimate that a total crop of 250,000 boxes at £9 per box, with 30% of that coffee unexported. So you're talking about 600,000 pounds of coffee.
It's why he says a joined-up government approach is needed to sell the 30% of coffee which is now in inventory.
So what we have said to the government, there are local interests that will be prepared to pay $3. We would be prepared to release that coffee at $5, and therefore we have asked the government if they could come in with a subsidy of, say, $2 a pound, which would be equivalent to about 200 million Jamaican dollars, and that would
really be what we call the COVID-19 intervention for the coffee sector.
Mr. Grant says that sort of help from the government would assist in helping to liquidate some of the excess coffee.
If we don't get that intervention, it could affect the ability of the processors to continue buying and therefore affect the ability of some 5,000 farmers to continue to sell that cherry coffee for the rest of the crop. And it could also affect the ability of the processors to start buying in August when the new crop starts.
O'Shane Masters, TVJ News. The Jamaica Public Service Company says it will not be disconnecting the electricity of residents in Dover, Enfield and Onoto Bay in St. Mary because of their inability to pay due to the quarantine. This follows concern by a resident of Onoto Bay who called for utility companies to state whether they will give reprieve to persons who are unable to pay bills due to the quarantine. Now Director of Corporate Communications and Customer Experience at the JPS, Winsome Callum, says the company is aware of the situation in sections of St. Mary.
Customers during this time, and we recognize that there are some of our customers in St. Mary who are not able to leave their homes. So the company has decided that we will definitely not be disconnecting customers in the communities that are affected by the quarantine. For other customers, once again, we ask you if you're having challenges, you contact us so that we can see what's happening with your account. And if you need a payment arrangement, we will see how best we can assist you. But for those customers in the communities under quarantine, we're not disconnecting.
Dover, Enfield and Onoto Bay will remain under quarantine until May 21, following a sharp increase in the number of coronavirus cases in the communities. Meanwhile, with cases of COVID-19 on the increase in St. Mary, the staff at the Onoto Bay Hospital says they are equipped to deal with any eventualities. Last Thursday, the government ordered a lockdown of 3 communities as a measure to limit the spread of the virus. Health Minister Dr. Christopher Tufton recently toured the facility to get a first-hand look at the situation at the facility, which is being used for quarantine.
I'm satisfied of the efforts of the medical staff and the management team as we continue to fight COVID. We have 10 beds behind us, 5 occupied, and another 3 being set up, which will be in total 13 beds of a 117-bed hospital.
Meanwhile, nurses at the hospital says it has not been easy during the COVID-19 pandemic.
It's a scary feeling, but because they are called to service, that we have to do what we have to do. All we do have to do, take good and take precaution measures.
Initially, the unknown, for our first time doing it, there would have been nerves, but as she said, no, it's part of the job. It's just as any other medical condition, there's a risk, but it's our job, and as long as you take the precautions, you're okay.
Jamaica now has 502 confirmed cases of COVID-19 with 9 deaths. In news overseas, people in the United Kingdom are seeing some light today at the end of their coronavirus lockdown. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson, in a televised speech, laid out new guidelines that will allow people in the UK to get back to some public activity. More from the CNN.
3 stages then to Boris Johnson's new plan, and the first one will come in next week when we see him encouraging manufacturing and construction workers to try to get back to work if they can, and if they can avoid public transport preferably. The next stage would come next month, with schools starting to reopen and shops as well potentially. Then in July, stage 3 with hospitality and public areas opening up as well. But all of this is conditional on the infection rate not rising sharply. If it does, that timetable will be stretched. Lockdown will be locked down even further, Boris Johnson says, because he's fearful of this second spike in the virus. The government being accused of woolly and mixed messaging as well around moving away from the slogan of stay at home to stay alert. The opposition Labour Party saying that's puzzling, not particularly clear. We also learned that Scotland and Wales haven't signed up to it. They're going to stick with stay at home. So some splits in the union as well appearing there. Also some new rules around quarantine. Boris Johnson saying that people coming into the UK would have to go into self-quarantine for 14 days. Quite why that's happening now and not earlier on in this pandemic isn't clear. Also on top of that, France is exempt. So again, some confusion around quarantine rules and when it applies and to whom.
News now in sports. Coach of Jamaica's Paralympic team, Neville Sinclair, says he is grateful for the gesture shown by the Ministry of Sports to provide assistance for an additional month under the Athletes Assistance Program, despite the postponement of the Paralympic Games. Renata Brown reports.
Following the announcement of the postponement of the 2020 Olympic and Paralympic Games, Minister of Sport Olivia Grange revealed that the ministry would discontinue the Athlete Assistance Program at the end of March. The program, which was rolled out in February, would see Olympic-bound athletes and those on the verge of qualification being given $20,000 per month to help with preparation. But while able-bodied athletes received their last payment at the end of March, the ministry extended the period for 1 month for Paralympic athletes, something Sinclair is extremely grateful for.
Although it might be just 1 month, I can tell you it will be doing a lot of good for the athletes that have been selected. I mean, well, you know, we have given them a list. On a whole, it will be very helpful for all the athletes. Because, I mean, of all my athletes here, I can tell you, basically, it's about 3 who is actually working. Who is not in school, they are unemployed. So, you know, this will really be a big help.
In the meantime, the National Code says despite being severely affected by the COVID-19 pandemic, athletes continue to prepare for next year's games.
They are following the program. I basically check on them, if not every day, every other day. And I can say at least 99.9% of the athletes, they are doing following the program that I set. You know, so we have been using that, and we have been, you know, but as I said, it's not really a disappointment, but it's just a delay. And we have come to grips with it that it'll come first, and, you know, we see through it. And although I said they're not really happy what really happened, but they understand, right? And they're living through it.
With the postponement of the Paralympic Games to 2021, the Para World Championships will now take place in 2022. Renata Brown for TVJ Sports.
And that's the Midday News. I'm Shane Masters. Join us at 7 for Primetime News. On behalf of the news, sports and production teams, good afternoon.